I know man spending more at Starbucks in a week than a policy would cost
in a month.
But that as people, that's how we are. But you have to understand the thing is, it's not that it's unaffordable. It's very affordable. There are options that are affordable to you. There are many different options when it comes to insurance. There are options that are affordable. So I think for a lot of us, it's the barrier of thinking it's going to cost more than it actually does, the uncomfortability of the conversation, and then just not having this as something that is taught to us, or whether it be in school or by our parents.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DHomerRealestate podcast, season 2. We have a special guest today. But before we get into it, I would like, if you like, comment, subscribe, download, write a review, share it with a friend, because season 2 is shaping to be very impactful, very informative, and, really inspiring as well. So today we have a special guest. This individual is a life insurance agent with 5 years of experience in the industry. He's an entrepreneur and business owner navigating through growing professionally and educating the community, his community. He is active in coaching for football. I see that. So I'm happy to see that, as well as I heard through the grapevine that you make the best wings in the city. You feel me?
I do. I do.
And I think I mentioned to you off camera, I'm a professional fat boy, so I'm going to have to put that to the test. You feel me?
For sure.
And the individual I'm talking about is Robinson Akintade. I was right there.
But no, thank you very, very, very much, Dondre. My name is Robinson Akintade. Honestly, you can call me Rob, because I know Robinson is the last name typically. But yes, I am by profession, I am a life insurance advisor. I deal in life, health, and wealth. I do a few other things as well. As mentioned, I do also, I'm a business owner. I run a chicken wing business, and I do indeed make the best wings in the ends. Okay. Aside from that, I do also I do coach football. I'm active in the community, do a couple of different things. I'm also one half of Bear Seasoning, which is a YouTube IG channel where we do cooking. It's a cooking show pretty much with me and my boy.
Okay.
And we cook different things. We teach a man how to cook. We have different people on. And we're about the community and kind of highlighting cooking in general. And we have a lot of different things coming. So I do a lot of different things. But I will be honest, out of all of that, the one that is probably the most important, the most dedicated to my time is my profession as an insurance advisor, because it comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of education.
Absolutely.
But it's also obviously how I pay my bills, but yeah, I love all of those different things that I do.
Awesome. Now, it's a tradition for the Humor Real Estate podcast that we start off with icebreaker questions.
Got you.
All right. So it's only a few questions. You don't have to worry about it too much.
Okay.
So the first question is, because you are in, wings, you make wings and stuff like that, where would you say is your top 3 wing spots?
Okay. So aside from my own wings, obviously, top 3 places that I enjoy their wings from. Okay, so in no order, I'm going to say Turtle Jacks. Turtle Jacks wings. Turtle Jacks has a little bit special of a place in my heart, because when I was growing up, where I used to live in Brampton, where I grew up, we had a Turtle Jacks close by. It used to actually be called TJ's. When it was called TJ's, it was different. It was different. But back then, that's kind of what started my love for wings. Like I was like, they had a wing special on Monday, and I was eating wings every Monday for years. So I definitely say TJ / Turtle Jacks. That's more sentimental. Hoops. Now, I'm not sure if you ever heard of Hoops. Hoops is a place. There's one downtown. There's one in like the York University area. Okay. Honestly, like very underrated.
Really?
Very underrated. Very good wings. I actually love their wings. If I'm going out to get wings and they're not my own, chances are I'll make the trip.
Okay, I'm gonna watch this back, and then I'm gonna start visiting all of them.
Yeah. And number 3, honestly, I'll give it to All Stars, and it's not as much because their wings are that good, but it's because their sauce variety is just
out of this world.
You can get some love just off the sauce variety, and honestly, like, No disrespect to the other locations, but the OG location in Vaughan is really the only one to go to. Like the one by Square One was but the one in Vaughan, if you want to go get the real all-star experience, you got to go to that one.
Okay. And are you a flats or a drums person?
I cannot discriminate. In my profession, I have to love both. I can't discriminate. I'll say though, the theory behind one having more meat than the other is completely false. As a man who's dealt with millions at this point of wings, I can confidently tell you it really depends on the size of them, because there are some flats that'll be bigger than drums, and there's some drums that are bigger than flats. There's no universal answer. And if we're talking, if they're the same weight, which one has more bone or more meat, that's also different. So the theory I'm here to debunk the theory that one has more meat than the other. There is none.
The drums has more.
Nah, you know what? But the drum also has bigger bone, and even though it's only one bone, it's bigger than the two smaller bones in the flat.
That on business. It's more.
He doesn't want to hear the science. He doesn't want to hear it.
Drums. Now I know you're also. I know you do football, but you're also into basketball as well. Yeah. So we are now in the second round. I know the Raptors got kicked out. I don't know if you're a fan of the Raptors, but I want to know, like, who do you predict is going to win the NBA Finals?
So, I do love the Raptors as a hometown team.
Of course.
I'm not a hater at all.
I'm happy. I'm happy to hear that, because for some reason people in Toronto hate the Raptors. Where do you come from? Go home.
I'm not on that. However, I will be honest, my favorite basketball team since I was 9 years old is not the Raptors. It's actually the San Antonio Spurs.
All right.
I know.
What?
I know. Since I was 9 years old, I've been a Spurs fan.
Why?
Everybody says that, but one, winning is exciting. They've been winners since I was 9. My first championship that I remember watching beginning to end vividly was that 99 chip, their first chip.
Really?
I fell in love with the winning culture. And throughout the years, they just kept winning. And nothing is more exciting than winning. And back when everybody used to say Spurs are boring.
Well,
hold on.
It's true.
Everybody used to say that the Spurs are boring. First of all, there's nothing boring about winning. There's nothing boring about the jewelry.
The style of basketball.
The style of basketball. The same style of basketball that people called boring in 2012, 2010.
They're doing it now.
Is the exact same. Nobody is more excited by anything in basketball than a bang corner three.
Ball movement.
Bang corner three. We love that. We love that in basketball now. That gets people out of their seats. We were doing that a decade ago. Plus,
let's just say, a decade ago,
2 decades ago,
you guys had a centerpiece in Tim Duncan.
We're not the same team now.
I know. But back then, from what I didn't watch too much. My mom is actually a San Antonio Spurs fan, so trust me, there's a lot of San Antonio going on in the household.
Smart lady.
And again, watching Tim Duncan on the elbow, maybe the block a little bit working. It's like, all right, guy. And he has no emotion. It's like, bro, you want sometimes
you have a
dunk on a man.
The thing is, you have that. You can get that in the NBA. You can get that from wherever you want. We don't do the flashy business. We just win. Obviously, we had our reign. We had our reign. It was like 20 years strong. We were relevant-ish.
Yeah.
And obviously now we're no longer. That's not the case. We're building it back. But back to the Raptors. I'm always proud of them. I think they're one piece away, make a couple of trades here and there.
Or one big man away.
Yeah, that's really all it is. Now, when it comes to who's in the playoffs now, who's left, who I think is going to win it all. Honestly, being honest, I think that we're most likely going to see a finals rematch. I do think that both the Bucks and the Suns are just the better teams in their conference. Now, I do like Miami.
I was about to say.
I like Miami because they play great defense. They play hard and all that, and they're greatly coached. However, they just don't have the offensive output to match with the Bucks, in my opinion. And now in the West, Golden State is Golden State. I do believe that Phoenix is a better overall team.
You think so?
I do. I think that they're a better team in the full aspect on everybody having their role, doing what they're supposed to do, executing, coaching. I think that Phoenix has a better coach because I don't think very highly of Steve Kerr. However, that's conversation for another day. But I do believe, like I said, that Phoenix just has a better overall team. Now, both teams being healthy, I think that Phoenix will win, and I think that it'll end up being a Bucks-Suns finals again.
And you say Phoenix is going to win?
I I feel like the hunger.
Predicting the finals.
I feel like the hunger. If I was to put my money on anybody right now, I think that Phoenix is the most in line to go and win the championship. Yes.
Yeah, I respect it.
Yeah.
Personally, my opinion is whoever wins between Boston and Milwaukee, that's winning the championship.
Yeah, and it's not going to be Boston.
Honestly,
they are a great team that I don't like.
I'm a Lakers fan, and I'm telling you, Boston is
Boston. Boston and all their sports teams. All their sports teams. I hate them all. Like all of them. All their famous athletes, all of them.
Really?
Tom Brady, Paul Pierce.
I'm not a fan of Paul Pierce. But David Ortiz, come on. Oh, that's his name, right?
Yeah. He was cool. He's cool. But like
that's his name, Big Papi?
Yeah. But yeah, so when it comes to that series, I do, but that's another thing. I think that when it comes down to Phoenix and the Bucks in the finals again, it's going to come down to Giannis as an individual taking over or Phoenix being the better team. Because Phoenix, I don't see Phoenix getting one of their individuals to take over and win them the series. If they're going to win, they have to win it as a team. But if Milwaukee wins, they're not going to win it. Not to say they're not going to win it as a team, but they're going to win it on the back of Giannis.
I agree.
But if I was to put my money on it, I'd say. So you're saying the Bucks.
I think whoever wins between
the Bucks and Boston.
Okay. I like Miami, but I just feel that they're too small. Adebayo is obviously he's great talent, but 6'9". If Brook Lopez and Giannis, I don't see PJ Tucker really doing much.
And PJ knows them because he was just there,
for
but
sure. But
it's different.
And then Kyle Lowry's out right now, and if Drew, plays like
That's
Drew,
the thing. When Drew is normally a player that plays here, right? And this is a good level, great level. But when Drew plays here, to be honest, nobody.
No, exactly. Nobody, you know what I'm saying? So I think he's the piece. Hopefully, Milton can get healthy, and then they can do things. But I'm a big fan of Giannis. Yeah. Now the last icebreaker question is, these past 2 years have been challenging, right? So I would love to know what is the biggest lesson you've learned in these past 2 years.
The biggest lesson I've learned in the last 2 years is that you have to be welcoming of change.
I see. No one really said that. Can you elaborate on that?
The reason why I say that is like everything changed. Everything changed for us as soon as the pandemic hit. Everything literally was different. We had to navigate. We shop different. We leave the house different. We protect ourselves different. People have personal hygiene different. It literally changed everything. Yeah. And for people there are some people who maybe should have or could have done these things prior, but they didn't. But this forced a lot of change on a lot of people. Yeah. And you had to be able to adapt because the people who weren't able to adapt to change are the ones who had a more difficult time, right? There are some people who had a really hard time.
Oh, trust me.
Some of the people who lost, who weren't able to pivot, whether it be professionally, they weren't able to pivot socially. Some people who really relied on certain types of social interaction weren't able to do those things. Some people obviously suffered through serious mental health as a result of it, right? Definitely. And some of that is relating to change as well. So I think that being able to adapt to change and roll with the punches, to be honest, is the biggest lesson I learned because you can have all the plans in the world.
But if something pivots, you're gonna have to know how to throw an audible,
right? And the thing is, there's doing it, but there's doing it, and you got to just keep it moving, right? You can't really harp on it. So I'd say that's the biggest thing in the last 2 years that I learned. You got to learn to embrace change. And change can come in the form of family, personal life, career, whatever. Because a lot of people left a career they thought was great and ended up obviously making a decision maybe that wasn't favorable. Then there's people who, on the flip side, left a job that, they were holding on to for security. They lost the security and they had to go out and do something else. They bet on themselves and now they're
entrepreneurs.
Selling.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs were born through the pandemic.
For sure.
I think, part of that is because they were willing to adapt to change.
And I think I love that. I like that answer. Everyone's talking about patience, there's a lot of different answers, but I like that, being able to adapt.
Scholars is an education center where we help students maximize their truest potential.
With more of that one-on-one focus, smaller class sizes, individual attention, doesn't matter your age, your grade, what subject you're in, Scholars has a program for you.
You already did a brief introduction about yourself. So I kind of want to touch a little bit on where you come from and like how's your childhood like before we actually dive into insurance and the big things.
So I was born in Nigeria.
Okay.
So I am Nigerian by background. English is actually technically my second language. I do still speak my native language of Yoruba.
Okay.
So I was born in Nigeria, came here when I was 2 years old.
Okay.
And since I've been here my whole life. I came to Scarborough when we first moved to Brampton. When we first moved to Ontario. Yes, when we first moved to Ontario, Canada, I lived in Scarborough first.
Okay.
Shout out to Scarborough. First, I lived in before I moved. So when we first came, I lived in Galloway.
Okay.
I lived at 207 Galloway Road, actually, with the convenience store at the bottom. So that was my building. We lived there for about 4 years. And then when I was 6-7 years old, we moved over to about where Tuxedo Court is. That's like the Markham Progress area. Close. I
used to live right down there.
Yeah. So we moved over there, and I was there for a bit, and then a few years later, when I was 12, is when we moved to Brampton, and I've been in Brampton ever since. So I went to high school in Brampton. I grew up in Brampton. So I'm the youngest of four.
Oh, wow.
I'm the only boy. I have 3 older sisters. Yes.
Before you move forward, how is that? Being the youngest and 3 older sisters.
I love my sisters. Growing up, it was really them against me.
Of course.
And I was also a product of a single parent household. So it was really so my father was around until I was about 10, and then that was kind of it. So it was really just my mother from that point on. And being in a house with 4 women and then being the only male in the house, the estrogen was obviously
at an all-time high.
Like incredible. So it was tough, but it taught me patience. I like to say that I don't interact with women the same way that a lot of other men do. I don't waste a lot of time on certain conversations, certain arguments.
Gotcha.
I don't argue with women.
There's no point.
Yeah, there's no point. But the thing is, men will find themselves doing it. And don't get me wrong. That's not to say that I never get in arguments.
No, for sure.
But I learned
sensible.
I know exactly how to navigate in certain spaces, which is a good thing. However, I understand the importance. I have a lot of close male relationships because I needed those. But yeah, so youngest of 4. I was not. Many people would believe that would believe that, oh, you're the youngest of 4, you're the only male, you would have been spoiled. My mother was very adamant on not spoiling me. So she, in fact, I think, and my sisters will never admit it, but she, in fact, treated me a little bit more harshly than she did with them, just to avoid spoiling me. My mother was very, very ruled her home with the iron fist, very, very much so. And like being Nigerian, a lot of our culture is very much predicated on respect and like no nonsense. So she held that, and doing it on her own, she felt like she had to be more harsh.
I was about to ask that. Like, do you feel like, now the absence of your father, do you feel like she had to make sure that
100%
you become and grow as a stronger man?
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like my mom was hard on us. She was very hard on me, but I'll be honest, like if she wasn't, I already got in trouble. Don't get me wrong.
If she wasn't.
Listen, I got into a lot of trouble when I was growing up. Not a lot of trouble, not like nothing crazy, but I got into trouble, whatever. I was a good student and all that. But if it wasn't for my mom having the leash on me, so to speak, that she did, I would have gotten in more trouble. And I would have been all over the place. And she was very, very much like whatever, but it was necessary. So I'm a firm believer. I'm not one of those people that grew up and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my mom used to beat me all the time. No, I deserved a lot of the licking still.
Trust me.
If I'm being honest, like as a parent now, I can be like, yo, that's the kind of thing that I would have gotten clocked. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, that's kind of where, yeah.
That's where the childhood was. I like that. Now, you growing up in, as the only male, like, I'm curious to know, like, was like finances, was like real estate, insurance, stuff like that, because you're now in the field and we're gonna dive into that. But was that type of stuff taught in the house at a young age?
Never. Like, I didn't know my mother even had an insurance policy until I got into the industry. And I asked her about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm doing this. Like, if you don't have it, you need it. And she's like, yeah, I have it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. How come we never had these kind of conversations? But it's like, I have understood and I've come to understand that the reason why a lot of our community, the Black community, the minority community don't have these conversations is, one, my mom didn't know enough about finances and credit. She was trying to get by. She didn't know enough about these things to have a conversation with me about it. But then when you look at when are these conversations usually happening? These are dinner time conversations. These are chilling on the couch conversations. These are, dropping you off to soccer practice on Saturday conversations with your kids. With a lot of our parents, especially ones from single parent households, we're raising ourselves. Yeah. Kids, me and my sisters, not to say we raised ourselves, but we were raising ourselves. We were raising each other.
At a certain point.
Because my mom's always at work when we're teenagers. She's at work, she's doing this, she's doing that. So for us, we never had these conversations. The only thing we knew was we had to pay the bills. You got to pay the bills. You got to keep making money. Work as many jobs as you can until you can pay the bills properly. You know what I mean? So like for us, finances was always like, it was more of a struggle than anything. Right. So we didn't have those conversations, but we did see the relationship between decent finances and hard work. That's one thing I did see very much so. And my mother's very much get in what you get out of it, what you put in. And she taught us that. So like, I'd see her work the double. I'd see her work the triple. I'd be days where I didn't see my mother. You know what I mean? But it taught me that this is what is required for me to go out and get it. But it also taught me that there's different ways to do so. Like she worked hard in a certain way, and she raised us to be able to work harder and smarter in different ways. Yeah. So I can say that she taught me a lot about the values that accompany finances. When it comes to finances, insurances, and all that, we didn't talk about it. And I think insurance is number one reason we didn't talk about it, specifically in the Black community, especially the religious Black community. People think of it almost like it's a bad omen to talk about insurance or to have insurance. Like, oh, I don't want to talk about insurance. I'm not going to die. Well, yes, you will. Yes, it is. One day, you will. And you need to have a plan for when that happens. So I think that was one reason why, like, growing up, it was literally like, shh, don't talk about that sort of thing. Like, what do you mean don't talk about it?
You need a plan.
So yeah, no, we didn't really get into that.
And I agree with that because, I'm blessed to say that, that I had both my parents, but one thing that they never forgot to teach me through their actions was hard work. Again, there was a time when, my dad, when it comes to work, this man can work 7 days a week, 10 hours. Boom. And I remember days when I was younger, there's days I really didn't see him. And I'm like, wait, I have both parents. What's going on? And then as you get older and then they start to, I don't know what it is. When you get older, they start to believe things to you. And I'm like, what the heck? You just told me this when I was younger. Because I wouldn't be so cheesed. Exactly. At everything. But yeah, again, that's one thing I can really and truly say that our people, they teach through action. But I kind of wish they would be a little bit more verbal. Yeah. Because if you combine the two now, you're then be able to, I feel like, elevate quicker. That's my perspective.
With observing through action, you have to be paying attention. And as young people, we're not always paying attention. Exactly. Don't get me wrong, when you tell us things, we're not always listening either. But at least we've heard. Yeah. There's a difference because hearing something, okay, you're not always listening to it, fine. But you heard it. Yeah. And you can remember it. Yeah. Whereas with trying to follow action, only people who want to observe and want to see that will really take it in. Other people, it's like, well, I'm leading by example. Well, like for some people, it's like, well, I don't see it or I'm not looking for it. Yeah. Right? So it is true in our community. We need to talk things through.
No, for sure. Now, before we get into the industry, I'd love to know, like, what were you doing before getting into the industry? This is actually a two-part question. What were you doing before you got to the industry? And at what point did you realize you didn't want to do it anymore?
So I'm a lifelong salesperson. I'm a salesman. I've been in sales forever. I'll sell water to a well. I do that.
Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I need to ask this question. Do you believe you're born a salesperson or you can be trained to be a salesperson?
Both. There's no one way to get to being a salesperson because I know some who I'm a born salesperson. I was born this way. I could write the book on the trainings. The trainings are all the same. I do it. I know it. Whatever. I was born this way. But I do know people who were not, who didn't have a real salesperson bone in their body, but they learned that this is one way to make incredible amount of money, and they're confident.
Yeah.
I do believe that if you don't have any confidence, you can't be a salesperson.
For sure.
That is not going to happen. Not even in the slightest. But yes, I was definitely born a salesperson. You can be.
Got you. But carry on.
So I've been in sales forever. I've worked everywhere from Sport Check, Foot Locker, Apple, Best Buy. So my last real stint, so post university, so I went to university at York U, and I got a communications degree, which I appreciated. I loved. I didn't go in taking communications. I actually wanted to do economics, which what? Honestly, it was really dumb. My whole process going into university was really stupid. But I think that's another problem with the system, asking a 17-year-old to decide what they're going to do with the rest of their life. But anyway, different conversation.
I digress.
So I finished school and I was just looking for a job. I worked at a recruiting company, did sales back and forth, blah, blah, blah. I did a lot of retail. So I found myself at Rogers.
Okay.
Working in the call center as a sales representative. And it was good pay. The money was good, but the environment, I'll be honest with you, I really contemplated the life that I have. I contemplated if I wanted to live in this country, if I wanted to be around, if going to school was worth it.
It was that bad.
Bro, I really disliked my life when I was working there. I really was having a horrible time because the money was decent. But for example, my life was working a 1 to 9 shift. Okay. 1 to 9.
The whole day is
1 to 9. 1 to 9 was my shift. Sometimes 2 to 10. Cool. My weekend was Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday and Wednesday was my weekend.
So
Sunday, I'm working that same 1 to 9. Saturday, that one. And as a young father, my daughter was a result of a previous relationship. So I had my daughter on weekends. So I'm having her on the weekend and barely spending time with her. She's spending more time with my mother and my aunt and my sisters and stuff like that because I have to work on weekends.
Yeah. And
I'm not seeing her. So a combination of that, hating my life, not being able to do things, and then the pay not matching up with what I was looking for in my life, I was just I can't do this anymore. Yeah. My blood pressure was high.
Really?
My health wasn't even good.
That's,
to be honest.
Wow.
It was really that bad. And like I said, as a salesperson, I thug it out through whatever, but I just needed more out of life. And I said, it was more so how it was affecting my personal life. So I started looking for different opportunities. Still in the sales environment, but different. I'm like, what can I do that's different?
Yeah.
So that's when I found the financial services industry, financial services and insurance. So my first stop was I worked at Investors Group.
Okay.
So working at Investors Group, I was there for about a year. Excellent training, excellent knowledge in terms of the industry and how the industry works from a financial services and insurances and benefits perspective. However, the fit wasn't necessarily for me. They weren't really trying to help the same demographic of people that I was trying to help.
Got you.
So I was very much okay, you know what, that's fine.
Nice.
God bless you guys. Thank you for everything that I learned. Let me try and pivot somewhere else. So that's where I found myself at RBC. And I've been there 5 years. So I celebrated my 5-year a couple weeks ago.
Jeez.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, that's how I got into insurance. And I got into it really. And the only reason, sorry, to backtrack, the reason why I even was interested in Investors Group was because I was looking into getting insurance for myself. I'm like, okay, I obviously have a child, whatever. And we're looking to getting some coverage for myself. And that's kind of when I saw underrepresentation of how many Black people were in insurance.
Yeah.
There was barely any advisors, nobody I could talk to. And the people who I could find, honestly, they were very poorly trained or they had a lot of ill knowledge.
Gotcha.
And I learned that when I went through the process. So that was kind of when I was like, you know what, I want to make a career out of this and see how many people I can help. And that's kind of brought me to where I am.
I like that. Now, I'm curious now because, again, a born salesperson, what made you choose insurance over anything else? Let's say becoming a real estate agent like myself or, in the banking or, stocks or anything else. What made you say, you know what, insurance is the vehicle that I have to get into?
To be honest, I think part of it is the fact that I come in contact with quite a few people, and I feel like I have the ability to educate to a certain extent very well. And not to say that those other industries are not important to have education and to have strong representatives in. However, I saw the real gap in insurance.
Got you.
I saw the gap in insurance, and I saw that, wow, insurance is literally the number one way that we can fight these generational roller coasters or generational cycles of not having money, not having finances. When I really broke it down, when you look at these other communities, the Jewish community, the Asian community, these communities that are a little bit more affluent than we are, the way they do it is through
that word.
The way they do it,
knowledgeable black man, right, I like it.
is that communications degree going to work? I told you, mama. So those people have done so with insurance. Insurance is literally, life insurance is literally the tool that has made generations of people rich. Yeah. Because with me, I hate seeing the GoFundMe.
Whoo, shut up. So let me tell you something. That is something that I actually wrote down because I never knew, like, I see them a lot. I saw them a lot. But I never knew it was that bad until I had a conversation with someone from another background. And I don't want to get into the depths of the story of how it actually started because I might cry. However, the question was, I hope you have insurance. That's what they're asking me. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And then I don't know what led me to be like, yeah, but it's unfortunate because I see a lot of, my people just don't have it and they go on GoFundMe. They looked at me and they're like, pardon? And I'm like,
it's a foreign concept to them.
GoFundMe? She was like, for what? And I'm starting to feel hot. I'm like, this is feeling uncomfortable. But I'm like, well, they, sometimes some people just don't have it and they want to get some collectives, people to, help. And she looked at me, she's like, people really do that? I'm like, oh my gosh, we are left behind. Like other cultures, that is not even a thought.
No.
And again, this is just my experience. I'm around a lot of, Black people. And I see that, like, especially during the pandemic, I saw a handful of GoFundMes.
Yeah, bro.
God, like honestly, and my heart goes out to them.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't want that for my people, and I figured, what is the way that I can help to make a good amount of change, but at the same time educate, because I felt like, if we got enough people who have insurance, bro, our kids they're not gonna be behind anymore. They're not gonna be in the dust. They're going to be inheriting the same things, the same cottages, the same properties, the same insurance policies that the white kids and the Jewish kids and the Asian kids are all inheriting, and is making them giving them the ability to go to post-secondary and not have to worry about working a job. They're able to, do things freely. They have their first home deposit ready. They have their wedding money ready. They have the luxuries of life because their parents were able to invest, because they know at the end of the time, their time on this planet will end
eventually. And so my question now is, like, why do you feel like our people have this struggle of understanding? Because, I've heard from all the generations, because I'll ask these questions, and one gentleman, like, I'll say my father, for example, we're talking about life insurance, and he said that one of the people that he was speaking to was like, oh, what would I want when I die? My wife, enjoy herself with another individual. And my dad was like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But
I hear it.
People really and truly believe in that concept.
I hear it all the time.
So, like, can you touch on, like, why do you feel like people in our culture have a trouble, and, like, how do you try to convey, like, yo, we need this?
So, one, religious people, like I mentioned before, religious Black people have this thing where they feel like they're not going to die. We're talking about death brings it on. That is not the case.
You're right, people?
That talking talking about it does not mean it's going to happen, because it's going to happen regardless. So I think number one is getting over this idea in their head that like, it's an uncomfortable conversation. That's number one.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's more uncomfortable for people in our community because for us, we don't want to part ways more often than not with the money that comes with it. I'll be honest. When it comes down to it, the people of the older generation, so this is how I look at it. Our generation now, we don't have a problem with life insurance because life insurance, to contrary belief, is very affordable when you're young. Extremely
much more affordable.
Extremely affordable. But people don't realize that. They assume it's more expensive. Why do they assume it's more expensive? Our people assume it's more expensive because when the conversation came about to get insurance, the first conversation they remember is their parents. And their parents were what? Older. Their parents were in their 40s, 50s, 60s when they first got this conversation about
obviously
insurance.
The policy is going to be a lot higher.
So they're hearing $200, $300 a month for insurance. I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, granny.
Exactly. So they hear that. And now that's what the kids, that's what we interpret it as. When I sit down and talk to insurance about people over like the last year, especially when I sit down with someone, I ask them before I give them their quote, I ask them how much do they think the policy is going to cost? Literally one out of maybe, I don't know, 100 and some odd people have actually said a number under or close to what their premium actually was. Everybody's always over because the common notion is that it's going to be so much more expensive. So price is a barrier before they even know what it is. I know mans who are spending more money on
Jordans.
Forget Jordans. That's some guys are spending more on Jordans.
That's damn near a policy.
For sure. There's men spending more money on backwoods. There's more women spending more money on makeup. There's people spending money on God knows what. And don't get me wrong. If you have your vices, you have your hobbies. I'm not even saying coffee. I know men spending more at Starbucks in a week than a policy would cost for a month. But that as people, that's how we are. But you have to understand the thing is, it's not that it's unaffordable. It's very affordable. There are options that are affordable to you. There are many different options when it comes to insurance. There are options that are affordable. So I think for a lot of us, it's the barrier of thinking it's going to cost more than it actually does, the uncomfortability of the conversation, and then just not having this as something that is taught to us, or whether it be in school or by our parents. It's not taught to us by our parents. Some parents do end up having that conversation with their kids who are well-versed and their kids understand it and get it.
So when it comes to the cash values within a participating whole life policy, the cash values can be used in a multitude of different ways. However, the main purpose of it is when you think about a whole life policy, you want to understand that the premiums that you are paying into the policy are a blended premium. So your blended premium is the pure cost of permanent insurance, as well as the investment that you're investing in, which is an investment with the direction of the insurance company specifically. The amazing part about the cash value in a whole life policy as opposed to other permanent insurances is this whole life policy cash value is guaranteed cash value. So you are able to take from this and plan within this policy at any given time in the form of an actual withdrawal or in the form of a policy loan. There's a lot of different ways to utilize it, but these are the reason why the cash value in a whole life is really special. And this message was brought to you by The Hustle Never Dies.
But I don't even think the problem as much is with our generation. It's with the generation
before us.
But the thing is, the generation before us has to also understand they need insurance, because when they all go, we're going to be the ones that are going to have to hold that burden. If our parents don't have insurance, and that's why even when I talk to certain people, I remind them, I'm like, do your parents have insurance? They're like, nah, but they're going to figure it out. I said, fair enough, but it's not them that's going to figure it out.
It's you.
Because when they're gone, who's going to handle the funeral costs? It's their kids.
Yeah. So now I've heard before, and I think that's another a question I'm going to ask later on, but I heard before that like debt can be transferred to someone.
That most debt is transferred to someone.
That's real.
Yeah. Like if you have credit card debt, they'll send it to a spouse or a kid if they can find one. If you have like loans, lines of credit, they'll find a spouse or a kid. Some places will try to look for a sibling. It can be very difficult to find somebody, but they'll find somebody. The only debt that they like is completely forgiven, usually student loan. Student loan, because
that's usually
that nobody can benefit off student loan other than yourself, right? So yeah, that's So if you have debt, that's another thing, because there's the idea that, oh, well, I had to work hard and get it all by myself. Why would I give them a leg up? Because they're your children, because they're your family. And the thing is, that is like, there are a lot of people who have certain generational traumas, and that's a different conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
But people come from an idea where nobody helped me, so I shouldn't help anybody, and we can't have that mentality.
That's so selfish.
It is, and as a community, we need to completely get rid of that mentality, because it's not that. It's supposed to be, if I can afford a couple, whatever, put aside a couple of this every month to be able to do this, so that when I go, my daughter, my children, my spouse get this and they're okay.
Yeah.
So that now they are not put back into that cycle of being, underprivileged and whatever, because they don't have the finances. No, we continue to let them live the life that they can live.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Now, as we're talking in the previous segment, this question popped up, and I'm going to preface by saying I had a conversation with a friend of mine.
Okay.
And, this might sound so bad, but I'm going to see if I can word it correctly. Okay. So during, the pandemic and racism, being very prevalent, and, we've seen what happened with George Floyd. And one, it was random thought that popped in my head. And I was like, I wonder if all us as Black men had $1 million, insurances. You think that was these companies will try to put a stop to us getting murdered? And my friend was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, imagine they have to pay millions of dollars every time someone passes, as long as the paperwork fits. You don't fraud, you don't lie, whatever the case may be. Because I'm like, you will have to pay. So imagine one company has to pay. Let's say 7 people pass, and we know the track record is a lot more. Imagine if they all had life insurance of $1 million plus. I honestly, at that moment, and I still do, I'm not gonna lie, believe a policy company would be an insurance company would be like, we have to put a stop to this. We need to protect because we're spending way too much money on these people. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree to an extent. I believe that it may encourage them to want to change policy for certain things, because then they're going to want to speak to the government like, yo, low key, you had to and I think that is going to start to happen. I think that based on the excessive financial literacy, the need for financial literacy now in our communities, you're going to start to see a lot more Black people who have insurance. However, I think that's something, the demographic to also understand and remember is a lot of the people who would be getting insurance are more than likely, not probably the same people who are maybe dying as a result of certain types of excessive violence. However, if we're talking police violence now, police officers are not going to know whether I have insurance or not. However, if there's more common knowledge that Black men in general are walking around with life insurance these days, it might be something that it might be a conversation. I don't think it would impact it on a grand scale.
No, yeah.
But I do think that it would make certain people in certain positions in different policies understand and rethink how they treat minorities. But the thing is, they're already having to go through this because more of us do have insurance. More of us do have these because the thing is, a lot of our children are going to become millionaires if and when we pass away.
Yeah, like my son's taken care of.
So when these things happen, now we have to make sure that we're raising a generation of kids, though, who understand how to use said money. Because they're going to get the money. Because right now what's happening is the biggest wealth transfer from the baby boomers to the baby boomers to the people below them, which is kind of some people in my age group's parents, some people it's our parents, et cetera, et cetera. But the next big shift of money is going to be our generation to our kids. Yeah. So to answer your question more directly, I think that it would make people in general second guess, because we would now be considered more valuable, so to speak.
Yeah. And again, I know it was broad, but it was something that popped me. I'm like, man,
yeah, no,
if we all had and then an insurance company has to drop $7 million in 1 year, or obviously on, you'd be like, wow, Yeah, we need to start talking to the people that be like, some of these things need to need a shift. Like, so be careful. Why are you guys stopping them? Is there a reason? Exactly. So these conversations will be had more. So yeah, so I'm not too crazy.
No, you're not. It's a thought process, and I get it. I understand it.
Thank you. I appreciate it for not making me feel weird. But now I really want to get into insurance. Like I want to dive into insurance. From my understanding, there's term, and then there's permanent, and there's two types of permanent.
Three types
of permanent. Okay. And then there's living, which is disability.
Yep, a few different benefits. Yep.
Can you touch on, let's start with term. What is the benefits, disadvantages?
Okay, so term insurance. Term insurance is the go-to. Term insurance is the most commonly sought out. It's the most commonly purchased. It's the most cost efficient of any of the insurance options. Term insurance is the most flexible as well. Okay, term insurance allows you to get a large amount of insurance for a little bit amount of money, and allows you to be able to lock in a specific term for a period of time. First question I always get is, well, if I live beyond that period of that term, what happens? Well, God bless, you're alive, which is number one, which is what we all want to outlive our policies. Yeah. But two, just like any other type of insurance, auto insurance, home insurance, any sort of liability insurance that you have, you don't ever get your premiums back. Premiums are not returned to you when you live. That's not how insurance works. It's like your car insurance. You don't get your premiums back when you don't get into an accident.
That'd be great,
right?
though.
It would be great. But then there would be no insurance company because they would make no money. So when it comes to that, that's kind of how term insurance works. But that's for that purpose, which is why it's not that expensive, because there is a possibility of you outliving your term. Yeah. However, you have to remember that insurance is a just in case. You could walk around with no auto insurance. What's going to happen if you get into an accident?
Mash up.
You could walk around with no home insurance. What's going to happen if there's a flood? You could walk, you know what I mean? There's a lot of insurances you could not get, but if you don't get it, what are the repercussions? Yeah. So same thing with life insurance. You could walk around thinking that you're going to live to 85, and you might, and you want to. Yeah. But people die every day. Yeah. And you want to make sure that if that happens to be you, your family's taken care of. So term does that for you. Disadvantages is the fact that you can outlive it. Yeah. That's really the only disadvantage of term insurance. Now, permanent insurance. There's three different types of permanent insurance. Okay. There's something called Term 100. Yes. Okay. So Term 100 is very similar to a standard term, except it does not expire. It's called Term 100 because you pay up until age 100 or passing away, 100 being the maximum. So even if you live to 105, still have coverage. Oh, really? Stop paying at age 100. Oh, okay. Okay. Set premium, locked in from the time that you get the policy right up until age 100. So it's permanent coverage. It's the same thing as a term, except it never expires. So the insurance company guarantees, no matter what, your family's going to get this amount of money. Oh, okay. Lovely. People love the idea of it. Of course, cost comes at a premium. Yeah, for sure. Because there is no, you're getting this.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Bingo.
As long as the paperwork is taken care of.
Like I said, you're going to get the money.
Okay.
So premium comes with that. But people like that. Then there's two different types of cash value permanent policies. Whole life, universal life. Yeah. Universal life is a little bit more old school, a little bit more traditional. Universal life policies used to be built in a way that were more advantageous than they are now. However, a universal life policy and a whole life policy, very similar. Both policies, you are paying a premium, right? And that monthly premium that you are paying is essentially a blended premium. Okay. Part of that premium is going to the pure cost of insurance, similar to the cost that you would pay on a term policy or on a Term 100 policy. There's the pure cost of insurance that you're paying that you would never see again. Yeah. But another part of that premium is actually going towards a cash value. Yes. It's like a cash account on the side attached to your policy. Dependent on the death benefit that you have will yield how the cash value grows. Okay.
Say that one more time.
Depending on the death benefit. So let's say it's a $50,000 death benefit policy. Yeah. Premium will be less. Cash value will grow slower. Let's say it's $1 million policy. The cash value is going to grow faster because the premium is higher and more money is going into this investment over time. Right?
Got you.
So whole life and universal life, same idea in that regard. The difference between the two is universal life. You as the policyholder choose your investment. So you choose whether you're going to be invested in something that's aggressive, conservative, balanced, whatever the case is.
So you're making your own investments?
You're choosing where that investment is going.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that based on market performance, your cash account will be determined based on market performance. So if the market performs really, really well, you can have a great looking portfolio. But if the market does poorly, not only will your portfolio be down, you may be in a situation where you have to pay more into your policy just to maintain it. Ooh. Which is why universal life is more so geared to people who are a little bit more investment savvy, who really have a high level understanding. Whereas whole life insurance, the premiums that you see or the cash value that you see on your policy in terms of your like your illustration are guaranteed. So if it says in year 10, based on this illustration, you're going to have $50,000 in this cash value, that $50,000 is guaranteed. Okay. If ands or buts. We are contractually obligated. And the reason why it's guaranteed is we, as the insurance company, are the ones that are choosing the investment. We make the investment mix, and it's mixed by like our global asset management team. Yeah. So they're making sure, obviously, like even in the event that the company loses money in a year, they still have to pay out if you wanted your money. So they have to obviously make sure that they're not losing money. Exactly. So that's why they can give you these guarantees. So whole life is a lot more of a popular solution these days. It's a lot more beneficial. And I think that whole life gives people a little bit different flexibility. Whole life, you can choose to pay up a whole life policy in 3 different payment periods, 10 years, 20 years, or life. If you choose life, you pay up until 100, just like a term 100. If you choose 20 pay, you literally shrink your payments into 20 years. After that 20 years, you never pay again, but you still are covered forever. Yeah, but those payments are going to be exactly. Yeah. Now 10 pay is the most expensive, but you're shrinking it to 10 years. 20 years is actually usually manageable. It's usually what a lot of people go with. Life pay is not as recommended if you're young, because you could if you live till 100, you paid a lot in premium. Yeah. Right. You're going to end up paying more in that premium than you would have if you paid up to 20 years, depending on, you're playing the odds. Yeah. Right? But if you start at like, let's say, sorry to cut you off, let's say you start at like 20 and then you jump up to want to do the 20 years, so you pay until you're 40. Yeah, and then you're done. And then you have all of that. The money's growing, the death benefit's growing. You never pay for insurance again. You paid it all in 20 years. No matter what happens, your kids get it. Your family gets it regardless. Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. So those two are very, very, like, not as much universal, to be honest. But whole life is very popular, but it's expensive. Yeah. Right. So there's a method to getting it. Now, both of those solutions, the biggest advantage of them is they are tax shelters. So a lot of people, when you start to get to a point where you're making a lot of money, you maxed out your RSPs, you maxed out your TFSAs, you're looking at your accountant like, yo, I'm about to make $575,000 this year. I need to duck away taxes. How am I going to do this? Whole life insurance policies are great because all the money that's growing in that cash value is tax deferred. And you can withdraw the money in different ways, some that implicate you in taxes, some that do not. Elaborate on that. So when it comes time to take out the value of a whole life policy, you can do it in way by just withdrawing the money. You just literally take a certain amount out of the cash value to say, I'm taking this money out. The death benefit is still for your family. Your death benefit will never go below the death benefit amount that's agreed upon. As the cash value grows, you can just take it out. If you take it out, it'll continue to grow with whatever's in there, and your family just gets whatever when you pass, less the money you took out. You can take a loan against the policy. Okay. Take a loan against the policy. You're essentially going to the insurance company and saying, I want to borrow against my policy. I want to take out some money with the intention to pay it back. And you're going to have some sort of interest that you're going to have to pay back on said loan, right? But then a lot of people will actually use it as a collateralized loan. They'll take it to a bank. So let's say I have $500,000 in my cash value in year 10, right? I can take this to the bank and say, because in those first two scenarios, in the first scenario, withdrawing it would make it as income. So you would have to pay tax on it, right? The second scenario is a policy loan. There's a certain interest that you would have to pay. And there is a little bit of, there's not taxes that you would pay because you would be getting it in the form of a loan, but the interest that you would be paying would be quite high. Then if you take it as a collateralized loan to the bank, let's say there's, like I said, 500,000 there. The bank says, okay, yeah, there's 500,000. Your credit is good. All right, cool. We'll give you a line of credit for 500,000. You have 500,000. And you're not paying tax on it because it's a line of credit, not a withdrawal. So now I use that 500,000 for whatever I want. A lot of people use it for a real estate project, use it for this, put the 500,000 back. The only thing you're paying is the cost of the interest on the loan. Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the other ways that people use whole life policies is they put it on their children, because kids, the only policy you can have for minors is whole life or universal life policies. You can't have term policies for minors. But you get a minor policy, you are taking care of their death benefit, right? But you're also growing cash either for them or for you. because when they turn 18, you could transfer the policy to them.
Yeah.
And take out the money at their taxable income, which is probably nothing.
Yeah.
And it's your money. And you take it out. And then now you say, hey, the policy grows. I paid it off. Policy grows for you. So whatever cash now is accumulated, you can have it. Or you can say the whole thing is for them. There's a lot of different ways to use it. A lot of different ways.
So, because there's a lot when it comes to, whole life, like permanent term. There is, I don't say a company, but I've heard of like, you shouldn't have them both.
You shouldn't have,
your insurance and your investments in one tool. And instead of you paying that extra premium, you should
separate and put it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well,
difference. What are your thoughts on that?
That's not bad advice, because the thing is, like I said, it's a tax vehicle, it's an investment vehicle, but it's not for everybody. And that's the thing. Like if it depends what your goals are. If you are trying to save for your first sum, if you're trying to save for a specific project, you're building towards certain things. Excuse me. Putting it in there is not as advantageous to you, because you want to put it somewhere where you want to access your money short term and things like that. This is a long term investment here. Yeah. This is a longer term play. You can access it in the short term, but that's not what it's made for. So every situation is different. So I'll talk to people, and yeah, you may have money, you may be able to afford it, but you may be better off getting a T100 if you really want permanent insurance, and then taking that extra premium that you would be putting in a whole life policy and actually, in fact, put that in your RSP. Put that in your TFSAs. When you've maximized those vehicles, because those ones may be more advantageous to you depending on where you are. Once you've maximized those, now you need more tax room. Now you have more income to spend on different insurance. Now you want to leave your family more, then come see me.
Gotcha.
Right? So it's not for everybody, right? So yeah, there are times when it makes more sense to have your term policy and invest how you're investing in your TFSA or your RSP. Put your $100, $250, whatever away every month, and then we can revisit this. Right? And that's a good thing about a term policy. You can convert parts of your term policy into a permanent policy at a later date.
I appreciate that, because I will say, I've come across, some, insurance people who.
Yeah. And I know exactly which companies you're on. I know exactly which companies you're talking about. I'm not going to say your names. Not going to say your names. I
was not going to say
but there are two companies in particular, and you guys need to stop doing what you're doing. Stop trying to force universal life down everybody's throat, because it's not for everybody. You have people paying a lot of money in premium that they shouldn't be paying for coverage that they don't need. Some people do need term. Educate them on why the term makes sense. Educate them on why universal life may make sense. Don't just say, oh, do this. And the one phrase that I hate is, oh yeah, if you don't die by a certain time, you're going to get your premium back. Stop telling people that. They are not getting their premium back with universal or whole life. They are getting access to their cash value, which has been growing since day one.
Yeah.
That is their invested amount that they are able to access. They are not getting
their premiums
anything back.
Gotcha.
Stop telling people that, because you make people think like, oh yeah, this is people really, excuse my friend, people really shit on term insurance.
Yeah.
But it benefits a lot of people, and it's affordable. And at the end of the day, having insurance is what's important. Nobody is listen, there's two different conversations to have when you get insurance or you don't get insurance for the reason of, so there's 20 years ago, well, my dad was supposed to get insurance, but he didn't get insurance because he felt like it would have been a waste of money if he lived. And then there's, I'm glad my guy got insurance, because even though, he had his policy for however many years, at the end of the day when he died,
that's something. No, for sure. And it's so true. And again, you come across so much different, advisors, telling different stories. And I want to ask you, like, what do you feel is that disconnect between companies, between advisors? Because, you have some advisors who, been to school for how many years, and, my way is the only way.
Yeah.
And then you have, certain companies, I'm not gonna say the name, but like, you can literally, be struggling in life. And then this company's like, hey, I can hire you, and you may not have no educational background, but we will teach you.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, cool. So like, what do you think is that disconnect between these advisors, companies?
I think that training is number one. First of all, before training, not everybody is a fit. Not everybody, just because they could be a client to have insurance, should be an advisor. So the companies that try to turn every client into an advisor, you have to stop doing that first and foremost, because it's a career, it's a job, it's something for everybody. Don't just tell people, hey, well, if you get insurance, your insurance will be cheaper if you start selling insurance to other people. That's not how it works, because they're not informed, they're not educated, they're not doing this for real. This isn't their job. One thing, the reason, see a real advisor. There's too many people doing this part-time. I wouldn't sell my house with a part-time real estate agent. I wouldn't do my will with a part-time lawyer. I might paint my house with a part-time painter, maybe, but even then, probably not. Like, there's certain things I'm not going to do with people who don't do this for real. And I think that with some of these companies, people aren't invested because they're like, well, I'm not making a certain amount of money, or like, this is new to me, so I need to have a fallback job. Right? So a lot of people are in that position. No disrespect to them. Sometimes you got to get how you live.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, I don't, like, that was the difference. I don't have another, I do this. Like, when I first, like, don't get me wrong, I have side
businesses, but at the end of the day, this is what
this is what I do. And when I got into this
Robinson like, Insurance.
You know what I mean? Be that. So like, when it came to that, it was kind of like, okay, well, that's one thing that I see is different. And I also think with some other places, a lot of advisors, because of the idea, and everybody knows, like in professions like mine, and professions like financial advisors, real estate agents, we're paid on commission. Yeah. Everybody knows we're paid on commission. There's no secret. Yes, me doing business with you pays my bills. Yeah. Some people think, though, and this is funny, I have to say this. Some people think, though, that their policy will make or break your month. Some people think that, if I don't do the business with this guy's not eating tonight. Relax. Okay? Let's hold the phone. There are obviously some fish that are bigger than others. Yeah. There are some deals when they don't go through, you're like,
oh my gosh. Trust me, I know those ones.
But at the same time, I'm here to help everybody, and everybody has to understand that. But my approach is the same with everyone. Whether it's a client that's going to make my month, or a client that literally won't even make a smidgen, a drop in the pond. I treat them the same, because for me, it's about educating. The more people know about insurance, the more people they will talk to about it, and talk to about it properly. Yeah. Because that's what we need, more people to understand this. So that's my thing. It comes down to education. And I'm not desperate to close a sale. Honestly, I'm very much like, some people tell me I can be a little bit more like, be more aggressive. I don't need to be. I educate, I stand, I do good by the client. They'll come back because they know that the other person who's being aggressive, who's breathing down their neck, who's hounding them, who's this and that, he's just trying to get paid, because there's a lot of pressure on him.
There's a lot riding on that.
And I honestly have learned that even if I am in a pressure situation, don't show it to your clients. They can read that.
Oh, they can smell it.
Yeah, man. Don't be desperate, bro. Yeah, like, stop being desperate. That's another thing.
A lot of people are. So there's a lot of people who are desperate for money. You can smell it. Trust me. We're all. You're in the industry,
and don't get into the industry just for the money. This isn't one of those industries, to be honest. Like,
it pays well.
Yes,
but
you can't do it only for the money, because there's parts that if you're only doing it for the money, the parts that are not glamorous,
and I'll box you in your mouth.
Yeah, bro.
Trust me.
You gotta be ready for it.
Trust me. Like, trust me. I completely understand, and I appreciate you, really breaking that down. Again, I will say I'm pretty sure there's people who started off part-time
100%
are now
exactly.
But again, it's not made for everybody. Like, again, people selling it like, okay, for sure, if you get this, your premium's gonna be cheaper, blah, 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 and then everyone joins it, and then it's like,
yeah. And it's like, I don't know, I'm in the business of giving people valuable solutions, valuable advice.
Facts.
So it's like, all right, like, you can go over there to such and such company and deal with such and such guy who's trying to feed you whatever, or you can listen, hear what I have to say, evaluate your options, do your Google. I tell everyone, do your Googles. Because what you're going to find on Google is exactly what I said. So I know what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't know if it impacts your industry much, but like, when people go on Google, like, do they get fed false information? Because I had a last season, I was speaking with a guest, and we're talking about like social media. Like, I had a client come to me saying, like, calling me like, I want this FHA loan and this and that. And I'm like, this is not Canadian. And to break their heart is like, dang. So like, do you run into those type of things?
Yeah. We run into that every once in a while. But I'll be honest, with insurance, there's a lot more information that is factual online than non-factual, which is good. American and Canadian rules do differ a little bit. Yeah. So sometimes I'll get that, but I'll explain to them like, no, that's America. That's not here. But more often than not, people do the Googles and they'll find out that like
you weren't talking foolishness.
I'm not high. You can't talk foolishness. It's right out there for people to know the truth if they want to know the truth, right?
I got you. Now we touched on term, we touched on permanent. Now, disability insurance. I'll look for you to touch on like the benefits, the disadvantages.
Yeah. So disability. So when we look at living benefits, the main two living benefits are disability insurance and critical illness.
Critical illness.
Yes. So the disability and critical illness can be impacted at the same time, but usually very different. So disability, very important, especially when I speak to people who are maybe not married, don't have a serious partner, or have a partner but maybe don't have any dependents. Because usually life insurance becomes more in the forefront when you own a property, you have dependents, because then it's like, well, something happens to me, the people who I'm leaving behind need to be taken care of.
For sure.
Disability is a living benefit. This is about me. If I'm able to live, but I can't work because I'm disabled, whether it be physically disabled, whether it be mentally disabled, illness of some sort. If I'm unable to work, but I'm still alive, I need to be able to still pay my bills, whatever. So disability is income replacement. Disability is essentially designed, long-term disability is designed so that if you are no longer able to work, this is going to pay you a certain amount monthly as per what you would normally be making from your job to replace your income. Maximum that any person can get in the country from disability from all sources is 85% of your taxable income. Okay. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. Max you're going to get from all disability sources is $85K.
Okay.
Max 85% of that $100K. So there's short-term disability and long-term disability. Short-term is normally offered to you by your employer. Most employers, if you're employed under a standard employment agreement, will give you short-term disability, which is normally about 3 months. Usually short-term disability, you're paid 100% of your salary.
Yeah.
And there's no difference. Then long-term disability will kick in after that 3 months, whereas usually your salary will either drop to a fixed dollar amount or as low as 50%, sometimes lower, right? The maximum being 85. No company ever gives anybody 85. I haven't encountered a single company that gives employees up to the maximum 85% that they're eligible for.
Why?
Because it costs them too much. And the thing is, depending on how much money the people make, if you are to give certain people a certain amount of insurance, it's going to cost a lot. So it puts the onus on people to get their own insurance, which they're supposed to do.
Time out. So how does it cost you much? You're going to pay it to me. You're going to pay me. If I was working, you're going to pay me that.
Yeah, but you're not working. So I have to pay for the plan, though. I have to pay for the plan just in case. I have to pay for the insurance the same way you would be paying for it. It's subsidized for me as a company, right? But the thing is, I'm only covering this for you if you work here. But like we see now, there's so many people who are self-employed, people who are workers, contractors, who don't even get short-term or long-term. So now you have to cover your long-term disability yourself. I always recommend for people, even if you have disability through work, which you should, still get your own long-term plan. Because one, either you need at least a top-up to cover the gap, or you don't have any coverage at all and you need it. So disability is very important for that. Disability, the things that are important for disability is how much money you make, which is the number one factor, which will determine what you're eligible to get. What you do for a living will determine your occupation class. So what you do for a living, your occupation class will determine how much risk is associated with what.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So a 4A, for example, being the highest, and A or B being the lowest. A B is somebody who maybe is like remedial labor, factory work, something like that, who they have a high risk of whether it be injury or whatever. Their premiums are going to be high.
So question. So people who like work in like skyscrapers and thing, I'm pretty sure that their premiums are like nutty.
Well, yeah, they would have very high. Some people in certain jobs can't even be covered, like professional athletes, like professional football players, for example. They can't get no disability coverage.
Because they're going to be injured. They're going to be injured every day.
They're in and out of that, right?
Yeah.
So some occupations are too risky to be insured, but many you can still be insured. So, like for example, like high-level executives making a couple $100,000 a year, sitting in an office doing desk work or executive work, you're a 4A. Right? There's no physical risk associated with your job. However, with disability, there's mental, obviously, and there's physical. Physical, yes, there's a higher risk, and physical is like there's no disputing it. Right? If somebody breaks their leg, they break their leg.
See it.
Can't dispute that. Whereas with the mental aspect, which is more so the case with higher income earners, you have to prove that. You have to, whether it be anxiety, whether it be depression, whether it be, whatever mental health you may be suffering through, you have to be able to prove it. Disability's biggest precedent is based on you being under the care of a physician. So as long as a doctor is obviously confirming that you are under their care, you are under this medication, you cannot go to work or do the duties of your job based on this, you would be essentially approved for disability.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you have to, but the thing is, for higher income earners, I have no incentive. If I'm making $500,000 a year, or if I'm making $250,000 a year, getting 85% of that, I don't want that. So I'm going to work. So yeah, this is a just in case, but people are only using it if they really need it.
Yeah.
Which is why higher income earners are going to pay less, because people who don't make that much, they do have more of an incentive to not go to work.
For sure. Yeah, I get you. Now I'm okay. You know, you have the disabilities, you have, depending on term, permanent insurance. When you look at it monthly, some people may feel like this is a lot. Like for me, like I don't think I'll be able to balance. You as an advisor, when someone comes to you, how do you, I guess, break things down that can actually fit their lifestyle? Like what is when someone wants to come to you, how do you, I guess, coach them through, okay, maybe you may not be able to afford all three or both right now, but let's start from here and then work our way to here. Like, how do you navigate someone through that?
First things first is they say that you should spend 2 to 3% of your annual income on insurance.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what they say. Now, when you think about 2 to 3%, that's a very small portion, because you spend more than that on a lot of other things.
Like food.
So say you make $100,000 a year, we'll use round numbers. That's saying that you spend anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a year on your insurance. You can get all three within that, depending on your age. You can definitely get all three. That's essentially, call it $200-$300 a month. It sounds like a lot, but when you look at your total income, if you make $100,000 a year, it's not a lot.
But now a lot of people are making 100,000. So what about the young?
Even still 2 to 3%. So if you're making $50,000 a year, it's still 2 to 3%. So now we're looking at what, $1,500 to, like $1,500, like what, $750 to $1,500, and you can still get all three, because that's the thing. If you're young, your premium is going to be lower.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So you can afford these things. So that's one thing I say. Obviously, work within your budget. I don't ever believe in telling people to get insurance because they need it if it's outside of their budget. Rather than get something, get enough, right? Get enough insurance. Get enough insurance. Get enough insurance that you can afford, because you can always get more insurance later. There's no limit to how many policies you can have. So it's not like somebody's going to say, oh, you can't get this, or you have this, so you can't get this now. No, if I have this amount of insurance, this is how much insurance I have, this amount now, but I'm going to get this amount later. This is amount I'm going to get because I can afford this now, rather than getting something that you can't afford. And 6 months down the line, you're telling me, hey, I got to cancel this because I can't afford it. That you never want that, right? You never want that. So for me, prioritize. Depending on your scenario, life insurance might be more important. So you can do it one of two ways. Let's say, you can only afford 150 between all three. You can do between, let's say, life, critical illness, and disability. Want all three, you can only afford 150. We'll taper each one so that you have enough of each that works within the budget, right? Because you want all three. And then that way we can say, let's say your life insurance is most important, dedicate most of that to this. Or let's say, for example, we say between all three, it's going to cost you $300, but your budget is $150. Let's say critical illness is not a priority for you right now. And the real important thing is life insurance. We'll get the life insurance that you need. Let's say the life insurance itself costs $120. And we can squeeze out the extra 30 to get you a disability. We'll do that. If not, we'll just get the life insurance. And then when we can afford it, we'll reevaluate at your annual review, or say, okay, have you been able to release a certain amount of money from your budget to be able to afford this? Because at the end of the day, yes, you should have it and get it. But if you can't afford it, you can't afford it.
Exactly.
Right. But if there's ways that you can sacrifice, and part of what I do is I go through people's budget with them sometimes too.
That's great.
And if there's a way that we can find the money, then we'll find the money so you can pay for your premium. But if not, okay, maybe you got to get a promotion. Maybe you need more money. Maybe you really don't have any disposable income at all, not a penny. And if that's the case, okay, we'll figure it out. And if not, you got to come see me when you do, right? Because we can't make every situation work. But I think that a lot of times when people understand the value they're getting from your insurance, they stop penny pinching. right? When people,
that's true.
And honestly, like usually if you're a parent of our generation, for the most part, some of the people in the generation before us, having a child is a big enough responsibility on them for them to say, okay, I'll pay this. Like, it's not a waste.
Trust me. Like for me, like my son is turning 3, and that's when the light bulb for me went off. Like 3 years ago. Yeah. It's when I was like, oh snap, I'm about to be a father. I'm already a husband. And obviously I'm not saying that me not taking care of my wife is not important, because obviously it is. Yeah. But for some reason, it was like once I knew my son was about to be born, it was like real life happened real quick. And I was like, all right, cool. What do I need to do? What do I need to study?
Because she's at a point in her life where she has the capability to get it herself if she needs. He's not. And then that's going to be a strain on her to make sure he has it, because she's doing it alone. So yes, children will light a fire on you.
It's amazing what they can do for you. It's amazing. Now, time has been far spent, but I have one last question.
Yeah.
We talked about like the insurance, talked about different, companies. But now, which road would you suggest someone who, because everyone's now becoming an entrepreneur. Everyone's now trying to dip and dab, dip their toe in every piece of water. Yeah, I did it. I'm not gonna lie.
For sure.
But like, how would you properly guide someone who wants to get into the insurance field and really, make an impact on people's life like you're doing yourself?
Honestly, I would say to get in with the company you get in with is good. Get in with an actual insurance company, not just a financial services company that does insurance. Those are not, because even like, for example, like people don't know what, like for me, like, I work at RBC Insurance, but RBC Insurance and RBC Bank are not the same company. It's 2 different companies. RBC Insurance is an actual insurance company. So our competitors are like Manulife, Sun Life, Canada Life. Whereas like another bank like TD, BMO, Scotia, they don't have insurance companies. They just have an insurance subsidiary. So they don't actually underwrite their own insurance. They're not insurance companies at all. They just have an insurance department. Whereas us, we are an insurance company.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So get it with like get it with a real insurance company in terms of your career, right? Started with a real insurance company and look into the reviews on who's training. Like I did my training obviously like 5-6 years ago. So it's very different then. But at the time, the best training that I got was from a company that I didn't work for. I no longer work for now. Right? The first company I worked for, I got better training there, maybe than I did at the company that I work for now. But it's all in communication. But because I learned a lot of different things. So where you get trained is number one. I think where you get trained, going to an actual insurance company is number one. And also in terms of navigating the space, making sure that when it comes to the exams, actually study, treat it like education, because you actually need to learn and understand and grasp these concepts really well if you're going to be able to teach it. So I'd say actually pay attention, because there's a lot of stuff you can get online, whatever, you just pass, but you want to understand it.
For sure.
And the other thing I'd say is find somebody who's in the industry. Honestly, find someone who's in the industry who can help teach, who can help mentor, who can help, motivate you, at least in the earlier stages, somebody you can kind of talk to, who can, because there's so many different concepts, so many different types of clients. Talk to people in your industry, because you're going to learn so much. But in terms of getting into it, if you have a passion for, wanting to help educate people or whatever, wanting to give valued advice to people, I'd say it's definitely where you want to be.
I love it. Now, as we're talking, this one last question popped in my head. Would you ever see yourself like owning your own company or being own franchise?
So it's definitely something that I've thought of, that I've contemplated doing, and I'm very much a goal-oriented person, and I do have certain goals and accomplishments that I need to achieve where I am first before I go anywhere else. I kind of have unfinished business.
I got you.
But at some point in time, it's definitely something that I thought about when the time is right and I have certain time in my life to dedicate to certain things, and I've built a certain fortress, I want to say, when it comes to my life and the things that I have. But yes, opening a brokerage, being able to educate other advisors, being able to show people the different ways that we can educate our community would be huge, because I think that once insurance becomes more widespread in our community, we're not going to be behind the 8 ball anymore. It's not going to be as much of a disadvantage. And I really believe that in the next like 20 to 30 years, as things start to change in that regard,
For sure.
we're going to start to see major change as well.
Well, I love it. I love it. There you have it. Before I let you go, do you have any socials that you would like to promote? Anything, businesses?
So first, I'll promote my own. I'm sure it'll be on the screen somewhere, but Robinson.insurance is my own Instagram page. So that's one that I'd like to promote. Also, we're in some local brands. So my guys over here, Hybrid Garbs, for sure. Definitely always want to shout them out. Always love. My guy Smiles, you know the vibes on the fitted as well. Yes. Custom fitteds, YouTube, everything. He's one of the realest. Aside from that, I'll just stick it to what I have on my person today. So that's what I want to shout out. But yes, you can see me on Robinson.insurance. You can get the wings at Robin Wings, ROBN
Robin Wings. Bop, bop.
And honestly, and Bear Seasoning. We do our YouTube videos. We have conversations. We talk about things surrounding food, and we show love to food. So that's at Bear Seasoning. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very, very much for having me. I appreciate allowing me to be on your platform. If you have not tapped in before and this is your first episode, keep tapping in. He's a real one.
I appreciate it.
And, thank you for having me.
Most definitely. Well, again, that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning into the DHomer Real Estate Podcast. You can listen on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. You can follow the podcast on IG, TikTok at the DHomer Real Estate Podcast. Twitter is the DHomer Pod. And then you can follow me personally on IG and TikTok at DHomer Real Estate. I hope you guys are able to catch a lot of gems, and stay tuned for much more episodes. Deuces.